Let's join Anita McNaught, who's on the Turkey-Syria border. In terms of the numbers, Anita, what is the story right now?
Well, we were surprised this morning, a significant jump, more than 1,000 overnight. Well, when I say we were surprised, we haven't seen jumps of this order, but then when you look at what's going on just across the border in Syria, and Jazeera al-Shugur is barely 20 kilometers, 10 miles from 12 miles from where I am now, you'd understand what the issue is. If I can give you a sense, David, of what we're looking at, if I can get our cameraman Volkan to zoom very slowly past me to the hills behind, what was a camp, a very small camp with just a few people hanging around, then became a camp where people and vehicles hung around, then became a camp where people actually put up tents. Now they seem to have been donated that famous blue plastic by the Turkish government, and there they rest. Each day we've seen that grow and swell. Those are the people still inside Syria, hedging their bets, hoping that they won't have to come across, but absolutely poised if the security situation turns any worse, and if they see any whisper or whisker of Syrian security forces appearing near them, to dart across the Turkish border to safety. That's just one area near us. There are other little camps like that forming on the Syrian side. We know conditions aren't very good there. If they decide to come across, of course, they put themselves in the hands of the Turkish government, and then they don't get to make their own decisions about how they spend their time.
And the Syrian troops, Anita, remembering what you told us yesterday, are not so very far away. As we see the picture coming out again, we get the hillside in the distance, and the fighting just the other side of that, you were saying. For those who've managed to make it, they bring with them not just a few belongings, but also some terrible tales of what they've endured.
Yeah, the stories are pretty consistent and altogether rather unpleasant. They talk of indiscriminate shelling. We've talked to one man today who saw 2 helicopters, military helicopters, hovering overhead, firing. Again, he said indiscriminately at people. We're hearing accounts of the destruction of Jazeera al-Shugur. One person said to us when we gamely smuggled a camera across into the Syrian side, because we thought that was probably the most discreet way to do this, that half of Jazeera al-Shugur was itself in the process of being destroyed. Let's have a listen to one of the people who spoke to our team yesterday.
We were besieged at Jazeera. We were being hit. We couldn't leave. They shot at everyone. I was shot in the chest. My cousin who was with me died. They cut our electricity, water, phones. We were left with nothing. That's why we came to the Turkish border.
Because we haven't seen it with our own eyes, because we're only relying on other people's accounts, we have to qualify with this is what we are being told. And we're being told that a number of soldiers just either couldn't shoot at their own people and paid the ultimate price for that, or have, I think, come your way.
Well, indeed, and some of them are showing up here finally, and as you can imagine, we've been very keen to try and track some of these soldiers down to hear their own accounts firsthand. I spent an hour today talking to a young soldier who had defected. His crisis of conscience started in Dera, but he was redeployed further up the country. He says the Syrian army is in the process of splitting apart because there are so many soldiers who, like him, cannot stand the orders to shoot on their own people. He said that when he was finally sent out, and he was sent out with a baton and not with a gun, and just told to beat up the protesters, that when confronted with unarmed demonstrators who were simply crying freedom, he couldn't go through with what he was asked for. He's lived to tell the tale. We of course have heard from other accounts that soldiers who've refused to take action against the demonstrators have themselves been killed. The other thing it was very interesting to talk to him about was the Iranian involvement. He said they arrived when the trouble started in Syria. Up till that point, he hadn't been aware of an Iranian role in the Syrian army at all. He says they're kept quite separate from the Syrian security forces, but they're known and they're feared, and they play a very distinct role in enforcement in the country. They're used particularly as snipers on rooftops. That's one of the roles they've been used for. So a very interesting account from him, David.
We saw the news, but when we went out on the streets and we saw that it was our own people protesting peacefully, there were no such things as armed gangs, but they said you have to go out on the streets and shoot them. We said we will only shoot at them if they shoot at us. If no one shoots at us, we will not shoot. I refuse to do this.
And David, I should make clear, that is not the soldier I was talking to this morning. That is a soldier we spoke to yesterday afternoon. So we're finally beginning to get first-hand accounts ourselves from people who have witnessed these events, from soldiers who can tell us directly what they have seen. And there is a consistency to their accounts here.
Indeed, Anita, it underlines how difficult the situation is, not just for the people in the town, but those sent there as well. Thank you. That's Anita McNaught on the Turkey-Syria border.